30 nights. That was all it took for a homeless beggar in Lagos to become a billionaire. But there was one problem. He had to sleep inside a cemetery to get it. At first, people thought he was mad. Who spends 30 nights among graves? But when Sola Ajadi walked out of that cemetery, his life changed overnight. Luxury cars, mansions, money beyond imagination. Yet the spirits who gave him that wealth were not finished with him. Because years later, something terrible began to happen. One by one, his children started dying. Was it coincidence? Or had the cemetery come back to collect its price? Tonight, you will hear the full story of the man who begged among graves and became rich enough to regret it. In the noisy heart of Lagos, where Danfor buses honked like angry goats and street hawkers shouted louder than thunder, there lived a man named Sola Ajadi. But nobody called him Sola. To the city, he was simply that beggar near the bridge. He slept beside a broken kiosk near Oshodi Bridge. His mattress was cardboard. His blanket was a faded rice sack. Children mocked him. "Baba, poor man," they laughed. Even dogs sometimes refused to sit near him. Yet, Sola was not born poor. Years earlier, he had been a school teacher in a small village outside Lagos. But bad luck followed him like a shadow. First, the school closed. Then his wife left. Then sickness swallowed his savings. Until one day, he woke up with nothing but a torn shirt and a tired soul. But Sola had something many people in Lagos did not have: a stubborn hope. And that hope would soon lead him somewhere very strange, very dark, very dangerous. One evening, as rain clouds gathered above the city, Sola sat beside the roadside bowl waiting for coins. Clink, 1 naira. Clink, 2 naira. Then suddenly, a shadow stood before him. It was an old woman wrapped in white cloth. Her eyes were sharp like someone who knew secrets. She stared at him for a long time. "Sola Ajadi," she said quietly. The beggar froze. "How do you know my name?" The woman smiled. "I know many things." She leaned closer. "You are tired of poverty." Sola laughed bitterly. "Tired? Mama, poverty and I are now brothers." The old woman nodded slowly. "There is a way." Sola's ears stood up like a hungry cat hearing food. A way to what? To become rich. He stared at her. In Lagos, many things are possible, but miracles rarely happen to beggars. Still, desperation makes even foolish ideas sound wise. "What must I do?" Sola asked. The woman pointed toward the distant cemetery. "You must sleep there." Sola blinked. "Sleep where?" "The cemetery." The old woman spoke calmly. "For 30 nights, you must sleep among the graves." Sola swallowed hard. 30 nights? She nodded. "You must not run away. You must not speak to anyone. And you must not fear what you see." "What will I see?" whispered Sola. The old woman smiled again. "That depends on your courage." Then she leaned close and whispered something that made Sola's eyes widen. "When the 30 nights end, wealth will find you." Then she turned and walked away into the rain. Sola sat frozen. His mind battled here. Cemetery? Ghosts? Spirits? But then he looked at his empty bowl. 3 coins. 3 miserable coins. He sighed. What is the worst that could happen? Those words would soon haunt him forever. That night, Sola walked toward the cemetery. The gate creaked like an old man complaining about life. The air smelled of wet soil and forgotten prayers. Graves stretched everywhere like silent watchers. Sola placed his cardboard near a tombstone. "Just 30 nights," he muttered. Then the wind blew. And somewhere far away, a dog howled. Sola wrapped his rice sack around himself. "Spirits of Lagos," he whispered nervously. "I am just passing through." Then he slept, and strangely, nothing happened. On the third night, things changed. Around midnight, Sola woke up suddenly. He heard laughter, not normal laughter, the kind that crawls inside your bones. He sat up slowly. "Hello?" No answer. Then again, the sounds came from behind a tall grave. Sola stood up carefully. His legs were shaking like a generator running out of fuel. He walked toward the sound. Then suddenly, a skull rolled across the ground. Sola screamed and ran. He ran so fast he almost jumped over the cemetery gate. But then he remembered the old woman's warning. "Do not run away." He stopped, turned around, and slowly walked back. "All right, spirits," he said bravely. "Let us finish this nonsense." By the seventh night, Sola was no longer alone. Figures moved between the graves, tall shadows, strange whispers. Once he saw a woman sitting on a grave combing hair that touched the ground. Another time, he saw a man without feet floating past him. Sola pretended not to notice. Instead, he talked to himself loudly. "Yes, Sola, tomorrow you will be rich. Yes, Sola, you will eat chicken every day." The spirits watched him with amusement. They had never seen a beggar with such stubborn courage. On the 15th night, something extraordinary happened. The ground near Sola trembled. A tall shadow rose from a grave. Its voice sounded like wind passing through broken windows. "Human," Sola froze. "You have stayed longer than most." His throat dried. I am just following instructions." The spirits circled him slowly. "What do you want?" Sola answered without thinking. "Money." The spirit laughed loudly. "Humans are always the same. We can give it to you." Sola's eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes, but every gift has a price." Sola hesitated. "What price?" The spirit smiled. "You will know later." Greed blinded his caution. "I accept." And the spirit disappeared. 30 nights later, Sola left the cemetery. Nothing looked different. No gold, no miracle. He sighed sadly. Maybe the old woman was mad. But as he walked down the road, something unbelievable happened. A luxury car stopped beside him. A rich man stepped out. "Excuse me," the man said. "Are you Sola Ajadi?" Sola nearly fainted. "Yes." The man smiled warmly. "I've been searching for you." "For me?" "Yes. My late uncle left his entire company to someone with your exact name." Sola stared like someone watching magic. "How much money?" The man replied calmly. "About 2 billion naira." Sola collapsed on the road. Just like that, the beggar became a billionaire. Within months, Sola's life changed completely. The man who once begged beside Oshodi Bridge now owned mansions in Ikoyi. He bought cars longer than Danfo buses. He wore suits that cost more than entire villages. People who once mocked him now called him Chief Ajadi. Relatives he never knew suddenly appeared. Even his former wife returned with sweet apologies. Sola laughed. Life was finally sweet. But somewhere, in the quiet corner of the cemetery, something was waiting, patiently. Years passed. Sola married again. He had 3 beautiful children. But one night, tragedy struck. His youngest son suddenly became sick. Doctors tried everything. Nothing worked. 3 days later, the boy died. Sola was devastated. But death sometimes happens. Life moved on. Until it happened again. 1 year later, his daughter fell sick. The illness was strange. Doctors could not explain it. Just like the first child, she died. Now Sola began to remember the spirit's words. Every gift has a price. Fear crept into his heart, but the worst was still coming. One night, Sola had a dream. He was standing in the cemetery again. The same spirit appeared. "Human," it said calmly. "You remember our agreement?" Sola shouted angrily. "You never said my children would die." The spirit laughed softly. "You never asked." Sola fell to his knees. "Please, spare my last child." The spirit stared at him silently. Then it said something terrifying. "The debt must be paid." Desperate, Sola returned to the cemetery. 30 nights again. He begged the spirits. He cried. He prayed. But this time, the cemetery remained silent. No voices, no spirits, no help. Because some bargains cannot be reversed. Sola finally understood. Wealth gained through darkness always carries darkness. The spirits never give freely, and greed often hides its true price. He sold his mansions, gave most of his wealth away, and returned to live quietly, not rich, but wiser. Years later, old storytellers in Lagos began telling a strange tale. They spoke about a beggar who became rich overnight and about the terrible price that followed. Some say Sola still visits the cemetery once every year, not to ask for money, but to warn others. Because in Lagos, even miracles can come with receipts.